Hey y'all, happy Friday. We are so excited that you could join us on our Friday segment. This is Science with Miss Jyoti, so welcome. I am glad that you could make it. And today we are going to be experimenting with some boats. So this week's theme activity, or this week's theme, is under the sea. And keeping that in mind, we are going to be making some boats, experimenting with them, and figuring out how they really work. So you must be wondering, what am I wearing? Yeah, it's not Halloween yet, but if any of y'all like the Minions or have watched Despicable Me, then you know that Minions are really great engineers. They're really good at building stuff. So we are going to be inspired by them today. And we are going to use this as a great excuse to wear a Minion onesie. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, to make your little boat, you are going to need some sort of tray or dish that you can test out your little boat in. I'm using this little Pyrex dish here. You don't need something quite as big, but whatever works for you, just make sure you ask your parents before you grab something from the kitchen. You are going to need either a foam cup or a foam plate. If there's like an old like meat tray or something, like really anything just is made out of foam would work for this activity because your boat's going to be fairly small. It's going to be like about 2.5 inches, so you don't need something that's really big. You're going to need some scissors, either a pencil or a marker for this activity. You will need some dish soap. So you don't need this much. You really need just a teensy bit, but I figured I'd show y'all our dish soap right here. You are going to need one toothpick. I have a few handy, but just one will do the job. Um, so that's for our first activity. For our second activity, you will need some foil. Again, you won't need a whole sheet of foil, but I just had one laid out. About half of this would be plenty for this activity. You will need some tape. We already had scissors from our first activity. And you will need pennies, as many as you can find. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started with our first activity. So, first things first, I want you to go grab your foam, whether that's a paper cup, or sorry, a foam cup, a plate, an old meat tray, whatever you're using, go ahead and grab it. And what we are going to do is we are going to cut it, or rather, let's draw first. We're going to draw it in this shape. So essentially what we have here is we have one triangle. We got a little triangle going here, a rectangle that's a little bit bigger than our first triangle, and then a teensy triangle at the end. We don't want our triangle to meet over here, so it's not really a triangle. But basically, if you just draw a triangle and then you just erase a little bit off of it, that's exactly what this shape would make. Basically, we need a little notch, so that our boat can be propelled. So I'm going to give you all a few seconds to just take a look at this and this shape so you can get drawing on your foam, and I will follow and do the same thing. So I'm going to have this up just because it's easier, because the boat really, again, the boat that you are going to be drawing is going to be 2.5 inches. So it really is going to be a really tiny boat. I'm really just using the bottom of my foam cup. So that's really, if you have a foam cup that's about this size, flip it over, use the bottom, you're going to draw it there and cut it out. And I'm going to do that just in 1 second so you can see that, but I just wanted to have the shape out here. If you are ready to go with your foam, then you can get started on drawing. So I'm going to put this down for a second, and we are going to start drawing at the bottom of our cup. So, like you saw, we're going to start out with a triangle. And I know Facebook sometimes flips the images, but in this case, it's a triangle. Wherever you draw it, that's going to work. If this helps you, you can draw a dotted line to see that that's the triangle right there. We're going to draw a rectangle that connects to the base of this triangle. So this is what our rectangle will look like. Again, I'm going to go ahead and dot the end of this because, as you saw, we are going to make a little triangle with a notch. So just So it's helpful. You will only be cutting out the solid lines, not the dotted lines. And then at the bottom, we are going to draw a triangle backwards, and it doesn't completely touch. So that's my backwards triangle. I know it kind of looks like it touches over there, but it doesn't. But when I cut it out, you'll be able to see that it will look something like that. So that is our goal. And then I'm going to make these lines over here solid because we will be cutting those. So we're going to cut only on solid, so we're going to cut around here, and then be careful when we are cutting the little notch because we do want it to have a little bit of space. Again, I know it can be a little challenging cutting the bottom of this foam cup or whatever foam piece you're using, especially cutting out this notch. It can be a little complicated. So it's all right to ask your parents or someone with some help to cut this out. And be careful with your scissors. We don't want to hurt ourselves while making our boats and being little minions. So I'm going to pierce through here so that it can be a little bit easier to cut. Again, be very careful. Keep your fingers away from where your scissor is actually going. And you don't have to pierce like this. You certainly can just cut just like that, but I thought it'd just be a little bit easier. So now that we have this little hole going here, I'm going to cut on the solid lines, and I'm going to put this whiteboard right up here, so if you're still drawing, that will be helpful for y'all to see that while I cut this out. Awesome. We have a little bit of foam flying here and there, but that is a-okay. We know we have to clean up at the end, so we will take care of that then. Okay, I'm just going to cut. Just keep cutting. We are almost there. As I keep cutting. Almost there. So that's what we have so far, but we haven't cut out the notch yet, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to let you watch me as I do that. There we go. Okay. Oh, that's the back of it. That's what we're trying to cut out, so we're just going to cut out the little triangle, the teeny tiny one. We want to keep a little notch there, just like that. I made 2 cuts, which make a little slit, and I'm going to bend this teeny tiny triangle backwards. And look at that. It broke on its own. And that is very helpful. So there we have it. Our teeny tiny little boat. Again, for size reference, this is about 2.5 inches. So if you put 2 fingers together, that makes about 1 inch. I hope that y'all have had a chance to draw out and cut out your boats, because we are going to move on to the next step. The next step is grabbing your little tray or dish, whatever you're going to be using for this activity, and filling it up with some water. So while I go ahead and turn around and grab some water from over there, if you haven't already, keep cutting till you have your little 2.5 inch boat. I'm going to grab some water. So you don't have to fill your trays all the way to the top. I know mine is a little bit big, so I'm going to fill it about halfway. And I will show y'all what my tray looks like when I come over there in just a second. And if you are using a glass Pyrex dish or just any glass dish, please be sure to ask someone to help you. It just got a little heavy there, and I forgot how heavy dishes can be with water in them. So, pro tip, ask your parents for help. So, this is what my dish looks like. It's filled up until halfway. And yeah, that is that. So, grab your little boats, and for the next step, you are going to need some dish detergent. Again, ask your parents before grabbing their dish detergent. So as you saw, I have this gigantic bottle here, which we certainly don't need that much. So I am going to grab one of my measuring cups just to pour it out in there so it's easier to dip. You do not need a measuring cup for this activity. You can pour it out in a tiny little bowl, or if it's easier, you can open the cap and dip it in there, dip your toothpick in there. So yeah, whatever works for you and whatever you think will be the easiest. So I'm going to grab my dish detergent, grab my little measuring cup, and we want to keep this away from the water because we don't want soap going in the water just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my water tray to the side so that I don't accidentally spill some dish soap in it. And while we have a second, I'm going to go ahead and clean up the little pieces of foam that were just flying when we were cutting. So we're going to go ahead and take a few seconds just to clean that up. And I'm going to go ahead and toss the pieces that I don't need anymore. Awesome. So measuring cup, bowl, any little thing that you can dip your toothpick in. So I'm using a half a teaspoon size. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and grab 1 teaspoon. You do not need 1 teaspoon. You do not need 1 measuring cup. I just thought it'd be easier to have something that's a little deep enough for the toothpick to actually be able to dip in it and get some dish soap on it, so that our boat can actually work well. So we have our 1 teaspoon measuring, and we are going to pour some dish soap in it. Ta-da! We have done that. And now I'm going to put this to the side. I'm going to grab a toothpick and I'm going to dip it in the dish soap. And then I'm going to grab my little boat that we just cut out. And what you want to do is you want to put soap on the little triangle part of your boat. So not on the actual notch and not on this back part of the triangle, almost like the base of the triangle. You want it to be on like these 2 sides, the 2 like almost diagonal sides of the triangle. So toothpick that has been dipped in soap. Let me tilt this so y'all can see. We have a little bit of soap in here and we are dipping it and we are putting it on the side. So again, it doesn't need to be a lot, but here we go. So remember, on the sides, toothpick, soap. That is the key to what you need to remember for this activity. So once we got a little bit of that going, we are going to place it in the water and see if our boat works. All right, are we ready to see this? So I'm just going to place it down just like that, and we're going to see if the boat moves. Oh my gosh, did y'all see that? Our boat just moved across the whole dish. How exciting. So, as you saw, this tiny little boat was powered all the way across from one side of our tray to the other side. And now you're like, okay, well, it's just a tiny little boat. Like, maybe it would just go on its own when it floats. But if you see, it doesn't go as fast as it did when it had some soap on it. So, if your boat didn't work this time, it might be because your dish was already a little soapy. That tends to not make this experiment work as well. Another thing that could have happened is that you accidentally put some soap on our little base of the triangle right here. Doing that also doesn't help the boat move forward. It kind of pushes the boat backwards, if that makes sense. So if you made any of those mistakes, then go ahead and try to fix that. We are science experimenters, so we will figure this out. If you didn't get it the first time, that is perfectly okay. When I was trying out this activity, it took me 3 times to get this right. So I know you can do this. I believe in you. But one thing else to remember is every time that you put the boat back in your dish, you want to make sure that you have fresh water. Because the way that this boat works is essentially the soap that we put at the back of this boat um, helps act as a surfactant, which essentially breaks the tension in the water and propels the boat forward. So there's parts in water that, so basically, let's see, we got a good view. So the soap that we put at the back of the boat basically helps push the tension in the water, and that's why our boat was moving forward. So we're going to do this activity one more time, and for those of you who it didn't work for the first time, I'm sure you're going to get it this time. Make sure to dump out your water from your tray. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first, and close this cabinet right there just because it was open. Okay, so I am going to empty out my dish in the sink. Be careful, it could be heavy. We don't want to spill, so be sure to ask someone for help. Just going to rinse this out a little bit and fill it up with water again, up until halfway. And now that we have our dish, we are going to go ahead and grab our boat, and we're going to do the same thing. We are going to take our toothpick, dip it in some of that dish soap, and put it to the side, the diagonal sides of the triangle. So this right here, and then this one right there. It's a little hard to see from that distance. I'm going to try to do it a little bit closer. So right there, and then right there. And just put soap a few times, maybe like 3 to 4-ish times. I think that's how many I did. I lost track. But just as many so that the soap has a little bit, the boat has a little bit of soap on it. We don't want it to be drenched in soap either. And once that's done, you want to place your boat down in the water, and you want the triangle pointing the direction, the top of the triangle pointing the direction that you want the boat to go. So I want it to go this way. I'm going to put it down, and let's see if this works. Look at that. Oh, sorry. You all didn't have a view of where it went. So it went all the way to this corner. So yeah, that was our soap-powered boat experiment. And now I have another experiment for y'all, which involves foils and pennies. So I am going to take a second to take my little boat out of the water, and we are going to dump out the water from this tray, and I'm going to move this stuff to the side, and we're going to grab scissors, tape, foil, and pennies. I'm going to give y'all a few seconds to go grab those while I empty out this dish and make some space for a new activity. Awesome. And I have a little bit of dish soap left because I poured out a little too much. So I am going to take this time to put it back in the dish soap container, just because we don't need it anymore. Yeah, and I'm going to put this in the sink. I'm going to put away the dish soap. Awesome. So I hope y'all have had enough time to go grab some scissors, some tape, some foil, and our pennies. Lots and lots and lots of pennies. If you don't have pennies, pretty much any coin will work. The reason why I asked for pennies is because I have a bunch of pennies, and it is easier if you use one type of coin. So if you have a bunch of quarters, that would work too. If you live in a different country and have a different currency of coins, any sort of coin would work. If you don't have coins, you could use dry rice, pebbles, really anything would work for this activity. But the purpose of this activity is to find out how many pennies I can put in my little foil boat, and how many pennies this can hold and not sink. So how many pennies will it still float with versus how many pennies will it sink with? So we are going to find that out. But first, we are going to make your very own foil boat that will look something like this. So go ahead and grab a sheet of foil, and you can fold it right in half. Again, you don't need this big of sheet of foil. Any size of sheet of foil would work. It really depends how big you want your boat to be. It could be as this tiny or it could be this big. Really, just ask your parents how much foil is okay to use. And of course, ask them before you grab it. So I am going to fold my foil in half. So whatever size you take, you still want to fold it in half so that our boat can be a little thick and actually hold those pennies, and just so that it maintains its shape. So after you fold this in half, it doesn't matter whether you have like the dull versus the shiny side. Either side would really work. So fold it either way. What you're going to do is you are going to hold it like this so it makes a rectangle and it's long, and we are going to take this and fold it in, almost make like triangles as if you were making a paper airplane. So we're just going to make triangles just like that. So you're not completely folding down as you would if you were to make a paper airplane, but we are just going to kind of have these two triangles in the air, and I'm holding the triangles, the base of them right there. So I hope that makes sense. And then what we are going to, how about I show that one more time so that we are all sure what to do. We're going to hold it in a rectangle. About halfway, you're going to put your thumb, and we are going to kind of fold it as if we were folding a paper airplane. So the back of this would look like a triangle with a rectangle at the bottom. So that's kind of like a triangle, and that's a rectangle going. That's the back of this, and that's kind of what the front looks like. And then what you're going to do is you are going to, I'm going to point the camera down so you can see a little bit better. So over here we have our little triangles going, and then we are going to fold over the triangles to make this little flap. So I'm holding down on the triangles and I'm making this kind of flap here. And then what you're going to do is at the back of this, we are going to fold it inward like this. So we're going to fold towards the pointy tip that we made. So we're going to fold towards that side. We're going to fold, and then basically just like keep folding inward until, or inside towards, like make your boat, and it will come to life, I promise. I know the instructions might not be the best, but just keep folding until it kind of makes this kind of a shape, and just enjoy folding and the sound that the foil makes when you're folding. Just what you're essentially going to do is what you did on this side. Just you had made, initially we made this little flap for the triangle, so just fold down on it like that. And basically on the inside we want to keep making our little boat. So as you can see, it's slowly looking like our boat here. I'm just going to keep folding. There we are. And then we're going to fold the back. So just like we did, just fold it inside and inside. And if you accidentally rip the foil while you're folding, that is perfectly okay. That's why we have tape. Just tape it along and keep going. And I'm sure you guys are doing just great. So keep folding till you kind of have something that looks like this. And what you are going to do is for the tip, we are going to, just like we did originally, it looks kind of like a triangle already, but we are going to pinch it together and twist it to one side, Let me see if I can do that one more time so that everyone can see it. We're just going to pinch it together and then twist it to one side so that it can become the tip of our boat. And right there, you could put a little piece of tape so that it all holds together, but foil typically does a good job of holding itself together. So now that we have our little boats going, you are going to grab your tray. So we're gonna, again, fill our tray with water up until halfway like we did initially. Any size of tray would work, whether that's a foil tray, a glass dish, a Pyrex dish, whatever you have, go ahead and grab it and fill some water in it. Awesome. So, let's fill in a little bit more. So remember, we want to fill up until like halfway. We are almost getting there. Awesome. So we have our dish with water right here, and we are going to grab our boat and just place it just like that on the water. And what did you notice? What happened? Comment below. Tell me what happened. You're right. Yes. So our foil boat is floating. It's floating around, it's doing its thing, it's moving around in our little dish here. So, this activity, we are trying to figure out how many pennies our boat can hold and how many pennies will it take to sink our little foil boat here. So, I'm just grabbing all my pennies from the counter that I had laid out so we can get this party started. Okay. So, as you can see, we have our boat, our foil boat. It's just twisting and turning, and that's 1 penny in. It held 1 penny. Let's see if it can hold 2. 2, 3. And remember, while you're doing this activity at home, you want to make sure that you're not putting all the pennies in just, for instance, the middle. Here, let me hold my laptop camera a little bit higher so you can see. There we are. You want to add pennies to different parts of your boat, not just one area, because that will make your boat sink sooner than the capacity that it has to hold. So that's what we're trying to experiment here. So remember, spread out your pennies. So we're at 3 pennies. We're going to keep going. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And again, remember, if you're doing this activity with anything else, for instance, dry rice, dry pasta, different coins, pebbles, really anything, the same principle applies. You don't want to put all your materials in one part of your foil boat. You want to spread it out. You want to keep counting and seeing how much weight your boat can actually hold. Speaking of which, I lost count. So if anyone remembers what our count was, go ahead and put it in the comments. If not, I'm going to count really quickly and we're going to get back to putting more pennies. We're at 12. Awesome. 13, 14, 15. And as you can see, our boat is going a little bit more in the water, but it's still floating. I'm just going to keep going and see if all of these pennies are enough to sink our little boat here. So I'm going to look from the side, and yes, indeed, our boat is going lower, but we're not at sinking just yet. And in a few minutes, we will talk about why our boat is still floating. Look at that. And if your boat has sunk, please tell me how many pennies or coins it took, because those were all the pennies that I had out. And our boat still didn't float, or, my bad, still did not sink. So, let's talk science. why is our foil boat that is made out of a very thin sheet of foil still holding up in the water? How is it still floating? So, basically, your boat right now is holding all these pennies, which is close to 30 pennies, and it is not sinking because the density of what it is holding, so the weight of these 30 pennies that it's holding, is less than the density of the water. So what does this word density even mean? Density basically means kind of like, so, okay, let's think about it in a different way. If you had a little object that was that didn't weigh a lot, let's say you have a really light bulb and you put it on sand, it won't sink through the sand. It'll just kind of sit on the sand, right? Versus if I had a really heavy object, like a big brick, a bunch of big bricks, like if I had 10 big bricks and I put it on the sand, and I just laid it on the sand, they would go through the sand, right? Because they're just heavier. So what happened here is our little boat was not as heavy or not as dense as the water that it's floating in was. So what you will notice is if you keep putting in pennies or pebbles or dry rice or whatever you're putting into your foil boat, you will realize that slowly it will start first going deeper and deeper into the water, but still kind of being afloat, and then after that it will sink in the water because the weight in the boat is going to be more than the weight or the density that the water can hold. So yeah, this was our little experiment, and I hope that you enjoyed both the experiments, and I hope you enjoyed digging out and finding a bunch of pennies. Ooh, look at that. We all put all the pennies to one side, and the boat is pretty much in the water at this point. This is why we don't put all the pennies in one area of the boat. That's why we only put them, or we spread them out. So yeah, I hope you had fun playing with water and playing with our boats today, and I hope you have learned something from our little soap-powered boat activity and our pennies and weight boat activity. Hope you have a great rest of your Friday. Don't forget to tune in to the remaining 2 activities today at 3 p.m., today at 5 p.m., and we will see you on Sunday, Rise and Shine, with our new theme. See y'all. Have a great rest of your day.